Hello, Dr. Kanika. Thanks for joining Eye on the Biz. Today we are at the workshop organized by Thailand Development Research Institute, or TDRI, which is talk about green economy. So could you first tell us what is green economy?
Actually, green economy is like we are trying to search for a new development model to trying to promote economic growth, or in other words, like trying to increase the GDP of Thailand, right? As well as trying to close the gap between the rich and the poor, taking care of the minimizing the impact of our economic activities on environment, as well as trying to reduce the use of natural resources, right? So all together, these are known as like the four pillars of trying to promote green economy. So in other words, like as the individual like Thai citizens, right? Like we normally know the issues of green economy as like we're trying to green the different sectors of Thai economy, such as like the manufacturing sector, agricultural sector, tourism, energy, transport, as well as other sector, right? So when you talk about green economy, it means that you're trying to tap into these different sectors and trying to change or trying to reform like the process from the way you use the resource to transform into producing into goods and services and supply these goods and services to the end users, right? So greening the whole economy means you have to tie all these different sectors together, trying to change the whole process from upstream to downstream.
And so you are saying that every sector of the economy can be made green. Are you saying that?
The main sectors of the economy could be green, and at the moment we already experience like different sectors in Thailand already started to be green. For example, like in the manufacturing sectors, they already start trying to minimize the release of like all the wastewater or other form of waste, or trying to recycle those waste back into the production process, right? So that is one sector. The other sector, like in the agricultural sector, we are already talking about organic agricultural products. We are also talking about trying to promote the soil conservation campaign, or even in the service sectors, like in the banking sector, we are talking about e-banking. We are talking about trying to minimize the use of electricity and all other sort of form of energy in everyday use. So in general, I would say that in different sectors, there's some space or there's some gap in which greening can take place.
So why do we need to talk about green business now?
There are two types of pressure that are following us right now. Like one pressure is what we call the external pressure. So from the point of view of like this different enterprise, we already know that the Western countries, or especially there's already exists some demand that people need to be producing or like supplying the goods or services up to the certain standard. Especially, for example, in the West, they already impose like a high like environmental standard. Probably we already heard about like the ISO standard, right? So in order for us to be able to sell our products to overseas, right? If you cannot comply with this type of standard, then it would be very difficult for us to have any market at all. The other side is what I call the internal pressure, right? So we already know that the Thai consumer itself, like we already start being more aware of the type of food we eat, or the other type of services that we already consume in everydays, right? So if the consumer already start reacting to what the company is actually generating to the external environment, then as the company itself, we have to come and reconsider and rethink whether or not like the current practice that we are doing right now already be able to cope with these two type of pressures.
Okay, great. And earlier you have mentioned these four pillars, and I would like you to elaborate more on each of the pillars, which I think are the key factor in doing green economy.
Yep.
Can you tell us more about the four pillars?
So let me talk about the first pillar first. Like the first pillar is like talking about increasing the GDP or trying to stimulate the economic activities that are going on, right? So as we know that in Thailand right now, people have been calling Thailand right now being trapped in what we call the middle income trap. So we have been, our economic activities or our economy has been growing to a certain level where we don't know how to grow more, right, to get out of this trap. So on the first priority, we want to search for a new development model to trying to stimulate the GDP to experience like a high GDP growth with 8 or 9%, like what we used to enjoy in the 1990s, right? So the first priority is to trying to promote economic activities in Thailand. The second pillar is that we're trying to make sure that when we grow or when we prosper, right, we don't leave some group of our Thai population behind. So when we grow, we need to try to minimize the gap or closing the gap between the rich and the low income household, trying to make sure that everyone is on board. Everyone can enjoy the positive consequence of economic growth. The third pillar, we're talking about when we grow, we enjoy the benefit from high production and high, like, enjoying all these different type of services that we currently have. We have to make sure that we also take into account the impact of our activities on the environment, right? We are not trying to exploit or make the maximum usage of the natural resources in our generation without thinking what's going to happen next in the next generation, right? So in the third pillar, we put emphasis on trying to minimize the impact of our economic activities on the environment, as well as trying to make the most efficient use of the natural resources. The last pillar, which the 11 national economic and social development plan are also stressing a lot, is trying to make sure that we support the sustainable production and consumption, right? So we want to make sure that people or individual people in Thai society, we know our role as the consumer, right? What sort of behavioral change that we can do to make sure that all this sustainable development can be achieved? What sort of as a business, what sort of practices that the business can contribute in order to make sure that sustainable development can be sustained?
I'm just curious about the first pillar of driving the growth, the economic growth of driving the GDP. Has it been proven in the West that doing green business can drive the GDP, can make it grow further?
I would say that this is still in the learning curve, that different countries even in the West, we have been talking a lot about the word green growth. We are saying that we cannot grow in such a way that, on the other hand, we are leaving lots of environmental impact or environmental burdens on some sectors of our economy, right? So on one hand, the West, they already start reconsidering that if they continue to use the old development model that they used to use before, this one cannot be sustained. We can achieve a high growth in this generation, but we cannot make sure that this high growth or high GDP growth can be sustained into the long term, right? So I cannot say that any country already proved that green growth would become a successful business model. But there are already different lessons learned that we have seen, that we have to seriously think about growing without considering about environment. Is that a right pathway for Thailand to follow, or should we start at this stage and trying to see that, given that we already want to search for a new growth engine to escape from the middle income trap, is green growth one of the solutions that we should be put in our agenda?
I would believe that these green economy things, to make it happen, the government will have a very significant role in making the economy green. So what is the role of the government in all this business?
Yeah, in the first place, the government should make sure that in order for this green business to survive, they need to provide the basic sort of environment. For example, like the basic infrastructure, like this different roads and other sort of thing that facilitate this green business to survive. The second one is like making sure that the rule of law can be enforced, right? Making sure that if there's like new green product that are being in the market, they are fully protected in terms of like patents or other sort of thing, right? And last but not least, for the different like this businessmen, right? What they want to see is like when they start new business, they want like all this bureaucrat or different public sector to facilitate this business to be able to survive. So we need to make sure we're cutting back all the red tape, the corruption, and other things that are under the control of like or responsibility of the government, right? So second of all, like what the government can do is they can use the different type of economic instrument to give incentive to people who want to start a green business, right? For example, if you're talking about the business in the renewable energy, the government already trying to give some small incentive by supporting the R&D, right? Like what we call the feed-in tariff program or the other cost program. So making sure that at the beginning, when the technology is still very expensive, the entrepreneur can be able to survive at the initial stage. And as like the times go along and technology becomes cheaper, then the government can gradually phasing out the subsidy, right? On the other hand, like what the government can do is they can also try to reduce or waiving like some type of import duties, or they can cap at some income tax or corporate income tax at a lower level in order to make sure that the cost for the new business, especially in the green territory, can be cheaper and the entrepreneur can survive in the initial stage.
So in this break, Dr. Kanika has told us what is the green business and how the government should do or could do to promote green business. In the next break, she will discuss with us the role of the private sector and the consumer in general. So what we can do to contribute to the green business of Thailand. So please stay tuned with us.
Chat.
So now let's discuss why the private sector should be interested in operating green business, or why should they make their business green?
On one hand, the business sector or the private sector, they are concerned that if in the environment around them or like external pressure that they are facing, everyone is already concerned about the impact of their consumption behavior on the environment. In that sense, like for the private sector to be able to sell that product, right, then they have to make sure that themselves, the product already start to be able to comply with the very stringent environmental standard that they are facing. Otherwise, that will be no longer like the room for them to be able to sell the product or supply the product to the general publics. So that is like on one hand. On the other hand, like nowadays, like a lot of people they are trying to like making sure that like different consumer in Thailand right now also start being concerned about like whether or not like the product that they are purchasing having a lot of carbon footprint or emitting lots of greenhouse gas into the environment, right? So if the consumers start being concerned about this sort of issues, right, as a business, in order for them to satisfy like this demand or this consumer concern, they themselves have to make a move or trying to change their strategy in order to making sure that they themselves can survive in very competitive environment.
So, okay, let's say that if I have a medium-sized company and I want to make my company, my business green, could you make a suggestion how could I start to do that?
I would suggest you to like first of all like perhaps applying the concept of we call the green marketing. i.e. like you need to first try to understand who is your consumer, right? And when you're talking about consumer, we are talking about different shade of green for the consumer, starting from very brown consumer group to a deep, like truly deep blue green, like consumer group, right? So let's say that you are like dealing, or your business is dealing with truly deep blue green group, right? In that sense, after knowing that there's a market for this green consumer or green product, then you can start thinking, what sort of marketing strategy should I put in place, right? So for the deep blue green, like lots of people are talking about having to choose the extreme green marketing strategy, i.e. you have to modify or trying to incorporate green into developing plan for pricing, trying to developing plan for the quality of your product, trying to thinking about distribution channel, and trying to talking about promotion, right? So the 4 Ps that people are talking a lot in the marketing circle, you need to reconsider all these 4 Ps and trying to see where you can insert the green into this 4 Ps, right? But one thing I want to stress is that it is not as if you already have the business and you add the green into the business alone, but you need to integrate this green into all these different part of the supply chain in your business, right? Making people in your business truly believe that going green is the right direction for your company to survive. So that is like cultivating the right values is the very important part of like all type of business, not even the medium size.
Can you give me some example how to do those 4P to be green for the I would say you use the term deep blue green, right? So I mean it's very on the environmental
conscious, yeah.
people. So how to make that 4P in concrete terms?
I will choose like some example. Let's choose 2 of the Ps. One of the first P that I want to mention is like the place, right? So where you sell your product, right? So nowadays, like one way that you can sell your product while minimizing the impact on the environment is like to apply the word green logistic or green transport, right? So perhaps like in the past, you are relying on the use of heavy truck in delivering your goods or like this different type of services. With the new world with green business, and you want to transform this place or distribution channel, what you can do is like perhaps you can form like a partner with other company that already have a distribution in that areas, trying to minimize the use of like the transport. Or in other words, you can also try the online distribution channel, right? Instead of having the shop, like having salesperson in the shop, having to lots of like resources putting into the distribution channel, you can try the online channel. Like that is like the first example. The second part, like that, when you're talking about the product, right? When you're talking about the product, when you want to green your product, it means you have to think about the way you assemble your product, the way you produce it, what resources you are using as the inputs in your production, right? So instead of using the fossil fuel as the inputs in your production, you can switch to renewable energy, for example, or instead of using very fancy, plastic bag in packaging your product, you can try to transform it into like some using recycle bag or reusing the reuse bag that some grocery store already putting in place.
Okay, now let's touch upon the end factor, which is the consumer. So how the Thai consumer can contribute to the growing of green business or green economy in the country?
So as an individual consumer, you can start from a very basic stuff, like you can now, when you go back, trying to see whether the light bulb that you put into your room is already the thin light bulb, or is it still a big light bulb that consuming lots of energy, right? You can see like whether like the electrical appliances that you're using in your houses right now, is it already energy efficient? And next time you go to the grocery store, right, you can see a variety of like products, like of vegetables or fruits that have in the market. Perhaps you can start supporting like organic food or organic fruits and vegetables to try to stimulate the demand for this product in order for the green business to survive.
But now usually, as I can notice, most of the environmentally friendly products are more or less more expensive than the traditional product. So how can we balance that? How can we convince the consumer to buy the more expensive product?
I think what we need to do is like we need to give them information. What are the value added that they will get from that purchase of the organic product instead of going for the traditional product, right? So as long as they know or they are aware that the type of technology that is used to produce this, or the fact that they need to avoid using the fertilizer or insecticides in their production, what they have to face a high cost, right? But on the other hand, as a consumer, you can obtain a high values from consuming this type of product. What is the values on your health? What is the values on the environment, right? So in that sense, I'm sure that like as an individual consumer myself, like if I have this type of information, then it will give me at least some boost to be able to spend more money to support this organic type or the more environmental friendly product.
Okay, that is very grateful. Today, I on ABIS would like to thank Dr. Kanika very much for sharing this knowledge with us, and hope to be able to talk to you again in the near future. ขอบคุณมากนะครับ